Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. I know I am not supposed to be here, but since the Treasury names have been moving like crazy and all those chart updates got messed up in Monday's video with the audio issue I had, I wanted to give you an update now. Also wanted to dive into CRWV and Circle. And as for the midweek meditation, I'm just going to do that tomorrow because the gondola was closed today. I'm going on a hike tomorrow morning, so it'll be perfect for that. So let's get right into the charts. Okay, starting here on UPXI, and I'm just going to cover the important charts because a lot of Treasury names are underperforming. Case in point would be CEP. This chart looks horrible right now. We're in the bottom third of the cloud. Looks like we're going to have more downside on a name like this, but we're focusing on the ones that are potential movers. Now, UPXI did have great structure in terms of we bounced off a key level, made a higher high, higher low, higher high, and we've seen this unfortunate rejection. There's been more weakness in this name than I would have really anticipated given the strength that is coming into Solana. Looking here on the daily chart, we are coming right into some support here on the Confluence model center cloud. So I'm anticipating a bounce from that point, even though we haven't fully reset in terms of our mean reversion here. On the daily time frame, our RSI never got to the top of the range, but we did print a mean reversion dot, and we got to the 786 level on this local bounce here to get that mean reversion dot. That usually is hinting at some weakness. Sorry about the noise. I've got a dog next to me who just flopped down. Anyway, so that is pointing to a bounce, even though mean reversion hasn't reset here on the daily. But if we look at the 4 hour, the 4 hour is definitely in oversold territory. We just tagged that on the 4 hour. Mean reversion looks like it is about to print a dot, and we are starting to get a bit of positive structure here just on the last 4 hour candles. Now, it's still early days on this. Yes, could we reject all the way down here to the 236 and this level on the cloud here at $4.64? Sure, that is possible, but it seems like this move is starting to get a bit exhausted. So I am looking expectantly to UPXI again, and I still have my position on this one. Now, if you were following me on X while I was away, I was saying that UPXI and ASST had the strongest setups, and really that was just in this territory back here that I was saying that, and that was because ASST had fallen out of, or was in this large falling wedge pattern, and had broken out, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, great structure, and we saw things really accelerate from there at the end of August already, and came back down and had been finding resistance at this 50% level. Now, ASST as a company had a big vote yesterday to see if they would fully convert and merge with another entity as a Bitcoin treasury company to become potentially one of the largest Bitcoin treasury companies out there. And you can see that it just exploded in overnight trading to new all-time highs. We got as high as almost $20, and in the overnight action from yesterday, we were up as much as 336%. Things really came back down to earth during normal trading hours today. This was halted 3 times, but we did see support come in here at the center cloud in this volume cluster at $6.56. So just a violent ride. I was able to unload spot in pre-market and some of my options right when the market opened. But I still have some of those. Now, for the conversion plan, there are milestones for them, for some of their pipe unlock to keep the price in the near term above $11.50. Then there's another milestone at, I think, $14, and third milestone at $16. So there is incentive to drive the price back up. Watch this one because there is a good chance it could climb back up to some of those higher levels over the coming weeks. But in the near term, things really spiked and got overextended. But if we're looking at this just on the daily time frame, even though it was this massive move, which we're not seeing all of it here with the after hours action on the daily, we didn't really, we had a mean reversion spike a few days ago, but we didn't really get into overheated territory like we have been back here. So tread with caution. It did retrace quite a bit, but there is a chance it could climb its way back up to that, let's say, $11 to $16 range. Looking to NAKA, this was one that we hadn't talked about in months, but again, if you followed me on X while I was away, I was talking about this one because all the way back in June, we had this wedge pattern that we broke bearish from, and the price target was right down here at $3.80, which also closed this gap up open from when they first launched as a treasury play. And I was thinking, gosh, that really doesn't even make sense from $13. It would have to get really beat up. And we followed this path down for a couple of months and then bounced. And I thought, well, maybe we are bouncing before the price target, but we rejected at the 50% level, eventually hit that price target, even dropped a bit below. I had my last limit order at $2.95, which barely missed. We got to just under $2. So that was a bit frustrating, but a bit of my position filled. And it has been bouncing away and had a huge spike yesterday and has since retraced quite a bit. I was actually hoping we would get support a little sooner here on this Confluence model center cloud. We didn't have the strongest close on the day. We actually closed underneath and rejected from that center cloud on 2 4-hour candles, which is not a great sign. But in terms of this move, if we just bring up mean reversion and RSI, yes, we spiked on the 4-hour RSI, but the 4-hour mean reversion still has a long way to go. And we have this overhead resistance line, which has played resistance 1, 2, 3, 4 times now. And so I've been targeting this as a magnet for the move, which is at around, if we hit it in the near term, it was around $11. Maybe now it would be around $10.50 if we can get a bounce on again. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. This close below the moving average here on the cloud is not the strongest sign, but even if you got in at the price target at that $3.80, the bounce has been, even just that was 42% to where we were yesterday at $8, 150%. So with all these treasury names, be careful, try to get in as low as possible. If we are taking the glass half full view with this, even though we are below the cloud slightly, we are currently bouncing from this previous high and this consolidation zone. So if you did want to enter this late, you do have a pretty darn clear invalidation. You could take a position on this right here at 475, and if you break a little below that and below this high, even below these lows here at $4.42, that would tell you that it's got more downside to it. So you're not risking too much to the downside for a potential bigger move to the upside there if you're playing it tight with your stops. Looking to DFDV, this one has been still underperforming, but it has found clear support around that low $14 level here. And we still have this overhead resistance, even though we peaked our head above it once, is still acting as resistance, and we're getting into this bit of a wedge pattern, and we're attempting to break back above it again right now. We attempted that today. So watch this one. We can get a bit more detail on that if we get into the 4-hour candles. We peaked our head above it a couple times. Is this going to play support now, and are we going to bounce away convincingly? This one has been beat up for a while, so I'm still waiting for it to prove things to me. Our current high is in line with this past high at $17.64. So what I would want to see at a minimum for positive turnaround and structure on this is we made this low equal high. I would want to see a higher low form and a higher high. And then if we make another higher low, I would be more confident getting in somewhere like that. But still has a lot of work to do on this one. But it's also not the worst looking out of all the treasury charts. Let's say it that way. All right, one more to look at, BMNR, Tom Lee's treasury company. Now, this really came off its launch high with a ton of profit taking. If you had gotten in around the $30 mark or just underneath, congrats to you, because that was a good buy on this one. Went all the way back up to 72 and now has come back down to about the $40 level. We bounced away a little bit already to 46. I would say since this is bouncing at this previous consolidation range, and just from a structure perspective, of course, we haven't made back to these highs, but you've made higher high. Now it looks like a higher low. We are bouncing away. If we corrected down a little bit, didn't make another lower low, this one could be worth an entry. Just think about the backdrop. The narrative has switched a bit from Ethereum to Solana. Momentum is coming out of Ethereum. Flows are going into Solana. Ethereum will need to catch a bid again or have some kind of catalyst for flows to come back into it. Even one thing you could consider is just look at the Ethereum chart. If we break above the resistance at $4,500, there's a good chance Ethereum is going to test its highs again. And if you want to amplify those gains, you could consider being quick to get into BMNR as something like that is happening, because you can catch that price catalyst of a break of 4,500 on Ethereum first, and BMNR would not react as quickly. All right, last one for the treasury names, GLXY, Galaxy Digital. I am sad we missed the video on Monday because I was saying as we were bouncing from this level here, these previous highs, that was looking like a good entry, especially because we had a bullish divergence on the 4-hour RSI, making higher highs as the price was making lower lows. Saw that with mean reversion too, and it spiked shortly thereafter. So apologies if you missed that. And we also just got above the 50% of this local range, which is a good sign of strength. Now, we did find a little bit of resistance, and on the 4-hour, we printed a reversion dot on the upper end. We almost touched the top of the range. If this cools off a little bit and bounces off the 50% here at $25, that could be a good secondary entry. Yeah, you didn't nail that low $20 range, but in the scheme of things, it's still not bad. And then you can see if we are potentially, because we've been making higher lows, higher highs, presumably this next move on Galaxy should make, moving the wrong thing, should make a, I don't know how to use TradingView, everybody, should make a higher high and then continue in this kind of pattern. And I love entries here at 50% levels because they give you a clear invalidation, like we often talk about, especially with risky plays. Get in at the 50%, you can set your stop just below. If we break below, you're probably coming down at least to 2340 here at the next fib level, the 382. Moving on to a couple non-treasury names, we have CRWV here, and we formed a great double bottom on CRWV after a nasty downtrend. I am still holding my spot purchases from these lows, but in terms of my options, I got out of my options today. And do I think it has more to run? Quite possibly, actually probably, yes it does. But in terms of the measured move from this double bottom and a fib retracement level, that 382, we just hit it from the underside this morning. So my options were up nicely, actually well over 100% from the bottom, exited those. And now if we cool off on the 4-hour chart, our mean reversion, we haven't gotten a dot yet, but the 4-hour RSI is definitely oversold. So I'm sorry, overbought. It's been a long day. If this comes back down and resets, we reset our mean reversion, I would fire those options back up. So keep your eye on this one for another opportunity. If you did get in it, it depends on your time horizon, right? If you're looking at this on the daily, obviously the daily time frame still has room to run. I'm just looking at it on the 4-hour, and we definitely made a higher high than this little spike right here, but I think it's going to retrace a little bit before its next move up. All right, last one here, Circle, which is finally finding just a little bit of support at this consolidation cluster right after the IPO at 113. It has come way off the highs from almost $300 there. Sorry, just having an issue with my watch. And if we look at this on the 4-hour, the one thing working in the favor of Circle right now is we've been in this massive falling wedge. We just broke out of it, not too convincingly. We poked our head into the center cloud on the confluence model here, but we have made our first higher lows and higher highs in a fair bit on this. I still think it has a little bit of proving to do. But the price target from this wedge break would be back up at just above $200. This does feel really weak, and there are instances where you break out of a downtrending resistance like this, and it can still ride that from the overside for quite some time before it finally gets its bounce on. So this might not be the bottom yet for Circle. It's a little too soon to say, but we do have a couple hopeful signs here. I would tread carefully if you're not in this one yet. I would say it might be one of those where you just want to take some time and have the chart prove it to you. If we can build some better structure and say this last swing high here at $135, if we bounce and get a higher high just beyond that and another higher low, that would give me a lot more confidence in this trend actually having turned around. Right now, it's just a hair too soon to call. You can absolutely give it a swing, but when you get that close to the market, your risk does increase, and this would be a safer play, but the price you pay for safety is getting in at higher prices. All right, so that's it for the Treasury charts. I hope that was a helpful little update. I look forward to seeing you guys on Friday for the full end of week chart review, and my dog Harold is jumping in right here. Harold, do you want to come up? Do you want to come up and say hi? Oh, he's caught in an Ethernet cable. He's caught in an Ethernet cable. We're gonna ruin the whole stream. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye for now. This isn't financial advice. Past results are not indicative of future performance. Do your own research.